Good evening, everyone, and on behalf of the West Fargo School District, the West Fargo Police Department, and everyone at our company, Flag Family Media, AM 1100, I'd like to welcome you to this very important community discussion. My name is Steve Hallstrom, one of the owners of our company and host of our morning news program on AM 1100. My, how times have changed. There was a day when the headlines and the news stories, it seems like, were very different than the ones we see today. There have always been risks to our kids, sometimes even in our schools, but the same technology that has been such a blessing to us in so many different ways is now adding to the list of risks that our kids face each day. Tonight we're going to have an open and honest conversation and discussion about our kids and the risk factors that they face. And what a great time for this conversation in light of recent events as our school year begins. And whether your family is part of the West Fargo School District or maybe even another school district and you're listening tonight or in a recorded format later, the conversations, the topics and discussions tonight will apply just about everywhere. And as a member of the media, can I also say that I congratulate the folks in the West Fargo Police Department, West Fargo School District for having this conversation. When we counsel our clients sometimes who are going through difficult or crisis situations, we say the worst thing that you can do is do nothing and say nothing, to bury your head in the sand and hope it'll go away, because it doesn't go away. The tough discussions have to take place, and I think it's wonderful from a community perspective that you are being as transparent as you are in the school district and the police department to have this conversation here tonight. At AM 1100, we're pleased to make this conversation available to those listening live tonight on the radio or a special live broadcast, or in a special live broadcast, and also on our website so that it can be listened to tonight or in the days ahead on our archive page. To begin our program this evening, I would like to welcome up the new superintendent of the West Fargo Public School District, Ms. Beth Sleddy.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for being here today. Welcome to Liberty Middle School and to the first forum ever here at Liberty Middle School, setting the stage for student success in 2018-2019. My name is Beth Sleddy, and I am the superintendent for West Fargo Public Schools, a school district that is growing with 11,081 students to date and still growing strong. I'd like to first quickly acknowledge who we have here in our audience tonight. I won't make you stand up, but if I could have Dr. Burgad, our secondary assistant superintendent, give us a wave, or you could stand up if you wanted. And then Dr. Rachel Agri, our assistant superintendent for elementary, is here with us. And then I was just wondering, how many here tonight, by show of hands, are district administrators? So we've got a lot. Thank you for coming out on your evening. And how many folks here are district staff members? How many are parents here tonight, here to learn more? That's awesome. That's who we really are hoping could make it here tonight. How many are community members, maybe community supports? And then, do we have any students in the audience? Good job. Thank you for coming out. So I want to thank all of you for being here, and I want to thank 1100 The Flag for moderating, promoting, and supporting our event. I appreciate their help in trying to solve problems in our community and help bring people together and to make our community stronger. Tonight's conversation might be tough to hear. It might make us a little uncomfortable. I know that it makes me extremely uncomfortable. But I believe that when we talk openly and honestly about the dangers that are infiltrating our homes and schools and restaurants, it doesn't take a break on the bus, in the car, or even on vacation. The dangers I'm speaking of tonight are social media. On July 12th, the West Fargo Police Department contacted me and met with our administrative team to tell us that we had a 7th grade teacher at Liberty Middle School that was being investigated for sex-related crimes with minors, including exchanging illicit photos and videos with students and having sexual contact with students. This teacher pleaded guilty to 1 count of gross sexual imposition, 1 count of sexual assault, and 4 counts of luring minors by a computer. To be clear, I will not brush this under the rug or avoid the conversation, even though it's tempting. I am not going to pretend that it didn't happen, because it did, and it was very, 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 very bad. Our district has to own this sadness. As a district, our team has met the last few months, and we've talked about how could this have been prevented? What did we miss? What more could we do to make sure that this never happens again? We clearly knew that this teacher was unprofessional and used poor judgment, but why was it inconceivable in our minds that she could be a sexual predator? Was it because she was a woman, or a teacher, or a wife, or a parent? Or was it because we are so out of touch that we don't even know what a predator in 2018 looks like? Our district needs to prevent this from ever happening again, but we need to do this by bringing the conversation forward. During the 2017-18 school year, all middle school students at Cheney Middle School and Liberty Middle School participated in several opportunities to prevent situations like I just described. School resource officers, school counselors, rape and abuse counselors, and our juvenile court officer all met with students throughout the year, all of the students, to talk about the dangers of social media, drugs and alcohol, and ways to stay mentally healthy and physically healthy. Our juvenile court officer, who is here tonight, Nicole Leitner, even talked to the students about why sending nude photos of minors is not only inappropriate, but it's illegal and students can be charged. So in talking through all this, we were thinking, what did we miss? Well, I think there was something big that we hadn't thought about. The adolescent brain is not fully developed, and they do not have the full developed frontal cortex. Because of this, they are making many of their decisions throughout the day using the emotional part of their brain. To sum it up, adolescents do not have the brakes that are fully functional. Some students are able to manage all of the content that is sent their way, but many students need help to put on the brakes. So what we determined is we need to take a three-prong approach. We need to continue educating our students, but we also need to educate ourselves, our staff, and our parents. Our staff, and when I say staff, I mean all staff, administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, food service, any of our specialists, all need to fully understand that we have a staff-student relations policy, and following this policy is not optional. The message needs to be clear. Violating this policy will not be tolerated. The policy protects everyone, both students and staff. Our staff also needs to understand the dangers our students are facing every day through their phones, so they can help protect them. Our parents need support from the school, but also from each other. Schools need to keep abreast of the latest technology. What are the apps the kids are putting on their phone? What are the dangers? We need to work with our police department and other agencies that can teach us what is out there, because clearly we didn't know. Parents can talk to their children's friends, and the two together in a group, however it may be, can continue to help each other and notify each other if they know of dangerous behavior in each other's children. Parents also need to be reminded that they are the owners of their child's phone. Yes, I have been there. You get the new phone, you hand it off to your child with a big lecture about how you're going to check it and how it's yours, and you can take it whenever you want. And you remind them that they can't take it in their bedroom at night, and you inform them of the dangers. Your kid says, yeah, I know. But over time, we get busy. We slack off. We trust our kids. We kind of forget. No news is good news, right? We haven't heard anything, so they must just be fine. We forget that even good, trusting, honest, moral children or sometimes prey to the dangers of social media, drugs, and alcohol. So that is why we're here tonight. I am far from the expert, and what I've learned the last few months scared me enough to say we need to bring people together. Tonight, I want to thank the West Fargo Police Department, who have partnered with us to bring this to you, and all of our panelists who bravely are coming forward, even students, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but they've all been invited because they have shared with me something that I did not know, that I thought you would want to know. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Chief Yankee. He is the chief of the West Fargo Police and has been a supporter of our schools. He takes our calls. He sets up meetings with us and keeps us informed, along with his entire department, with the support of our school resource officers. And I cannot imagine it being in this position without the support that I've had from the West Fargo Police. So let's give Chief Yankee a round of applause.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to the parents who are in attendance tonight. This is meant for you and for this educational awareness, and it means a lot to see so many parents that are out there. I want to thank Superintendent Sleddy for her leadership. The fact she's willing to just take things head on and work with us and learn lessons and how do we move forward as a community is huge from our superintendent for our schools, and I thank her for that. And I also want to thank the panel members. Normally when you have these types of forums, there's always one item that's missing. And that category that we're usually missing are students. And the fact we have 2 students that are willing to step up, sit here on this panel, and talk to parents is a huge deal. That you're gonna hear straight from them is a great deal for us. So thank you, especially to you two. And then lastly, to the Flag Radio. They're always willing to partner with us and are always there to support, and we thank you for being a part of this tonight. Tonight, I'm here as both your police chief and also as a father of a freshman and a 7th grader. So we are facing the same battles, the online battles that you are. And what I mean by that is how do we protect our children while invading their privacy versus allowing them to grow into good, prosper adults. Snapchat, we all talk about. I will tell you, my 7th grade daughter has been telling me recently she is the last 7th grader on earth that doesn't have Snapchat. And I tell her congratulations, it will stay that way. But I'm here not just as a chief with a badge on, but as a father that has a kid at West Fargo High and at Cheney Middle School dealing with these issues every day. It's the first week of school, day 2. Our only worries should be whether the lock got unlocked at the lockers, whether our kids made it through lunch line and how they got to and from school. Those should really be, in a perfect world, the minor worries that we have as parents. Unfortunately, that's not the case. That's not the reality that is out there. The online threats that our children face are real, they are scary, and it is something that needs to be taken serious. Social media apps can be used to bully kids to the point where they've committed suicide. Social media apps are used to create child pornography that are sent among thousands of people. If you think about it, you take one picture, you save it, and you send it to one person, you've lost full control of that. And now it can be shared and viewed among thousands and thousands of people, which also leads to a term called sextortion. Once you send that first picture, and if you do it to the wrong predator, now they want money to keep it from going public or ask you to produce more pictures to keep it from going public. While those situations are absolutely horrible, I'm going to leave those topics to our panel of experts tonight. During my short time, I want to talk about the predators that are out there looking for a way to exploit our children. They are everywhere, and it's a scary thing. I want to illustrate this by talking about some of my previous employment as an FBI agent. I had done a long-term, did human trafficking, mainly adults and foreign victims for years and years and years. And in 2015, I also was given the chance to manage and supervise the Child Exploitation Task Force. thinking that it wouldn't be that much different than what I had already done. And when I took that task force over, what I found out is we had hundreds of cases open on child pornography offenders. Not 100, not 200, hundreds of individuals that were producing child pornography, that were distributing it, or just possessing it, along with sex trafficking that were going on amongst our adults and travelers that would come in. It was eye-opening, shocking of how many predators are out there trying to take advantage and exploit our children every day. It's something that I've never gotten over, and why this is so important to me, because I had incredible people that did this every day and dealt with that evil that are trying to take care of our kids. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of the last cases I had before leaving the FBI and coming here about the dangers that are out there. The dangers necessarily can be West Fargo residents, but more than likely not. We live in a very good place in this country with very low crime rates compared to others. But it doesn't mean that the predators aren't out there and willing to come in. One story started in November of 2016. An 11-year-old in Kansas City began conversating with a man on a Discord app, which was for gaming. Gamers use this as a way to text amongst each other while they're playing. I'm not the expert, I don't understand all the apps, but that's what started, with an 11-year-old with an adult with that app. In April of 2017, that 22-year-old drove from Maryland with his brother one night, came to Kansas City, and took the 11-year-old. She went missing. We put an Amber Alert out, and she was found in St. Louis the next morning. They came to Kansas City with not even enough money that they could get a hotel room, to show you how far these predators will go. So they didn't have enough money for a hotel room. They were out in a wooded area behind a store where the Amber Alert eventually caught them. And what had happened is this 11-year-old's innocence was lost out there in those woods. He sexually assaulted her before she was recovered at that point. So that will show you the levels of these predators, that they will come across the United States to take an 11-year-old and to sexually assault them before we were unfortunately able to get her and him recovered. The second one was a Kansas City guy, a 22-year-old that went from Kansas City out to Maryland. Same thing, started online. That's where the recruitment started. Texting, using those different apps to communicate, till he went and traveled all the way to Maryland and took a 16-year-old at that time. Her grandparents found that she was missing, put out an alert. They eventually got to Kansas City and were immediately arrested. But by the time they arrived, again, her innocence had been lost. She had been sexually assaulted numerous times during the trip back to Kansas City. These are the types of predators that I'm talking about that will go anywhere across this country to take one of our kids. And even this year here in West Fargo, we had an online proactive undercover going, and we arrested a 52-year-old man from Fergus Falls that came pretty close to this school, thinking he was going to meet a 15-year-old that he was going to take to go sexually assault. Luckily, this time it was the West Fargo Police Department pretending to be that 15-year-old and grabbing him in the parking lot and arresting him before he was able to hurt one of our kids here. The predators are out there. They're trying to prey on our vulnerable youth every day and try to take their innocence away. By the time we as a police department get called, it's usually too late. And that's why we're here tonight, to be proactive amongst us as parents, that we are monitoring what our children are doing online. It's not an invasion of their privacy. It is us as parents protecting them every day from those predators that are trying to get and hurt them. So I thank you for coming tonight so that you can help better monitor your kids and spread the word to your neighbors, to your friends that are not here tonight, that this is real. This is occurring every day. It's not just a West Fargo thing. You're going to hear more about how kids are mean to each other and do these things with those same apps. I'm concerned just as much with those predators that want to come in and take our kids. So thank you. Thank you to the panel. And with that, I will end. So thank you.
All right, so parents and students especially, this opportunity is for you. We want to hear your questions. This panel would be glad to take your questions and answer them to the best that they can. And so there will be some people walking through tonight to take any questions you have. If you have a way to write those down and pass those to the folks who are kind of walking through tonight, then the questions can be brought up here. While that happens, let's introduce you to our panel of guests that have joined us tonight. Thank you, first of all, everyone, for the time on what's normally a busy night. We'll just kind of start and go down the row. If you'd please introduce yourself and a little bit about your background and how this particular issue impacts you.
My name is Nicole Leitner. I am the juvenile supervisor here at Juvenile Court. I cover Cass, Trail, Steele, Richland, Ransom, Sargent counties. I have worked with the Juvenile Court for 22 years, so I've seen definitely a change in the types of offenses and the social media crisis that we're kind of in right now. So I'm here as a parent also, and a member of this community supporting your children on a daily basis. So I entertain any questions that you might have about juvenile court and what offenses that we receive for that.
I am Officer Rhonda Jorgensen. I am with the West Fargo Police Department. I am also the school resource officer here at Liberty Middle School. As the SRO here at Liberty, I did spend the last 5 years at Cheyenne. I spend a lot of time with students, teaching them about social media, about different apps, and the dangers. And I think it's just so important that we share that with parents. So I'm here to inform you. The two students that I have to my left did help me create this top 10 app that I hope you find very helpful. And we will be available afterwards if you do have just some one-on-one questions.
Hi, I'm Jessica Korselman. I'm a senior at Cheyenne High School, and like Officer Jorgensen said, we're here as students to educate parents on the apps there are. Obviously, as a teenager, I know the apps out there. I go to school, I see a lot. So we're here to help you guys and answer any questions you have.
My name is Jacob Anderson. I am a student at Cheyenne High School as well.
I'm Jennifer Fremstead, and I'm the principal at West Fargo High School. And I, along with everyone here tonight, is concerned about what we see in our building, but more importantly, what we don't. Often our response is reactive, and so tonight is the first step in being very proactive. It's my hope that by the end of the evening you realize that there's a partnership between our parents and our community and administration, teachers, SROs, and school counselors. We provide more than the implementation of policy. The single most important thing that any school does is they address the health and safety of our kids. The moment we do that, we know that our students will learn. And so without doing that, we know that we will never reach the full potential of what every child can do. And so it's my hope that we can dispel the idea that the school principal is there to discipline. We are there to support. And we are there to provide a resource for families who have questions about how we look at our child's phone, what questions we should be asking our students. And if you don't have the capacity to do it, ask for help, because that's why we're here.
Hi, I am Jennifer Bobe. I'm here as a parent and the project manager of Prevent Child Abuse North Dakota. Thank you for having me.
All right, and so Heather and Stephanie are available and kind of walking through. If you have a question, please let them know. They've got pens and paper and can give you that so you can write down your question. And then ladies, feel free just to bring them right up here, and we'll ask those questions on behalf of the folks who have turned out tonight. Again, thank you for coming out. Panelists, very much appreciate your time as well. Jessica, I'd like to start with you because like the chief said, it's an honor to have you and Jacob as students. Thank you for coming tonight. Not easy to do with all these old people here, so thanks for doing that. What's the most surprising or shocking thing that you have seen circulating the hallways at the school that you go to?
I guess the most shocking thing is in hallways now, there is nobody that will look up. Everyone walks down with their head and they're on their phone. You are in between class, kids are on their phone. Do I know what each student is doing? No, I don't have time to ask each student what they're doing on their phone and whatnot, but each student is on their personal device. You don't hardly see a student that's not doing something on their phone.
Jacob, how about you? What's the most surprising thing that you've seen? Maybe someone's shown you something that they've seen that was sent to them, or somebody's said something that really has surprised you.
You know, I guess I would just kind of agree with Jessica that, you know, you're not only, you know, you might not only see your child on their phone at home, and it's kind of, you can't get away from it when you're at home. But even if not great things are happening on your phone at home, just as people are on their phone just as much at school. Every free second they have, every free time you have in class or in the hallways, on your phone. So I think it's just really that you can't get away from it, and even if the unfortunate situations that people might see at home, it's following them to school and home because you're just around everything all the time.
Thank you for that perspective. First question in from our audience, and we'll take these as soon as they come up. These take priority tonight, so thank you. First question, how do we as parents have the conversation with our kids that there are predators out there without scaring them? Rhonda, maybe start with you on this one. What advice would you have for a parent? How do we have that conversation without scaring our kids?
I think just letting your child know, or letting your student know that there are predators. They're amongst us, they're in our community, and that they are out there. There are tools that parents, like I said, can monitor what their kids are doing, but just having those open conversations and monitoring what your child is doing online. You need to have their passwords. And Jessica and Jacob and I talked about this last week, and Jessica said, it's your phone, but you need to have those, and you need to have the passwords. You need to understand that there's inside apps, that there's vaults and there's private places that are password protected, and just having the information on how to find that information. So, like I said, that's why we are all here tonight, is to empower parents to, and educate you.
Rhonda, let me follow up on that. How do we navigate the chambers of the different levels of the apps? Us old people, it's all we can do to sign on, let alone the 8 levels of security. How do we find out what's there? Because your child may not want to tell you about all the hidden places within the app.
Like I said, I think just educating yourself, and it's difficult to do. I am certainly not an expert in this field. I ask a lot of questions of my students. I really do, and I'm lucky enough to where I've built the relationships that I have with students that they'll teach me. Well, Jorgensen, this is how you do it. Like, I'm supposed to know, but but once I have that information, I am always the first one to share it and bring it to parents.
Thank you. Anybody else on the panel want to add? Jennifer?
I do. A couple of things. I'm a mom of a teenager, and I go through the friend list. And if he can't tell me about the friends, we remove the friends. I think that that's my friend John's friend. Okay, he's not yours now. You're going to remove him. Friends, I check friends lists, and I often hear the phrase, "Why don't you just trust me?" And I always reply, "It is not about trust. I love you more." This is not about whether I trust him or not. He's a great kid. He does not have the capacity to understand if he's being lured, if they're being honest and truthful. And so I have to be that filter, and I have to teach him how to become that filter. And part of that is just really checking those friends' names. If he can't describe who they are and where they're from, they're not your friend. And I make it very clear. The other thing is, as a parent, I Google it. If there's an app that I don't know about, I Google it and I find YouTube videos that walk me through what it is, And I ask Alexa if she can tell me if there's hidden passwords or codes. And I try to be incredibly cautious. Not overly worried about his choices, but when he asks me questions, I want to be knowledgeable. And so I really work hard at making sure that he knows it comes from a place of care and concern and not mistrust or a place where I feel like I'm taking away his independence. It really is a genuine care and concern for his health and safety. And as much as it bothers him, I hope that he will appreciate it.
Jacob, how do we as parents have that conversation with our students? It's not easy to say what Jennifer just said so well. Can you write that down and share note cards with all of us, because that sounded really good. But how do we as parents have that conversation? Pardon?
It's all part of the principal thing.
Yeah, right.
I feel horrible for my kid.
Yeah. So Jacob, tell us, how do we as parents start that conversation if we haven't had it with you? What do we say to you to let you know that we care about you more than anything else, and that's why we want to ask these questions?
I think that, like Superintendent Sleddy said, the school district does a good job of having resources come into the school and talk to the students about this already at the school. So maybe if it's a little uncomfortable starting the conversation yourself, starting with the question, have you had anybody talk to you about this at school? Because there are resources that come in and these discussions have already been come up. So if it's more comfortable to have them kind of start the conversation about what these discussions have taught them at school already, then you don't it's kind of the student leading the conversation of information that's already been presented to them, and then stuff that you can reiterate instead of throwing, I guess, your thoughts in straight ahead.
Thanks. Jessica, anything you want to add to that, or are we doing okay?
I also think it comes down to, as a parent, if you cannot say to your child, I pay your phone bill, can I please see your phone? And if they resist, that's the minute that you take that phone and you have a lot of checking to do, and you need to be looking at your resources. Because if your student can't openly have the conversation with you, then that's when the action needs to be taken, that something's going on that you don't know about.
All right. Well, we're going to say Jessica told us that we could do this, son. So
Don't go saying that. I don't need students coming after me.
Next question coming in here tonight. Nicole, we'll direct this one to you. What are the legal ramifications of sexting, and what are the charges that students can be at risk for if they're sending or receiving these kind of photos?
There's actually probably 3 charges that fall under where adolescents and kids can be charged. Juvenile court jurisdiction starts at the age of 7, and we can accept charges all the way up through 17 and 364 days. So if these activities happen prior to that, they fall under juvenile court jurisdiction. If somebody takes a photo of their own new body and sends it, they've distributed child pornography, even though it's their own body. It can be charged out as possession of child pornography. It can be charged as possession of certain materials prohibited. It can be charged as using a minor in a sexual performance. They range from an A misdemeanor level offense to a Class B felony level offense. Juvenile court's purpose is to not charge out these kids, not to punish them and bring them into the system and be like, you're a convicted felon now, or even adjudicated delinquent. It's about education. And so when we get these police reports, we have multiple ways of how we can work with the youth and give them the education that's needed. Our purpose is to stop the behavior, to protect them. When I met with all of the middle school students, usually how these things begin is a boyfriend-girlfriend type situation in a relationship. And so I opened my presentation with, how many of you ever dated somebody and you were gonna love them forever, and you're still with them? Not many raised their hands. But that's how these things start. They get distributed and they go further in regards to that. We don't have a lot of juveniles who are actively pursuing what we would call the predator type situation, but we do have the retaliatory sextortion stuff going on that the chief did mention. We will have students who will, in retaliation, make public websites on Instagram, post these photos. And so that's just, middle school and high school are tough enough for these kids, so when those things happen. But yes, it is illegal. It is illegal for kids to share photos of one another. It's illegal for them to distribute those.
Sounds like something we'd be watching on a soap opera at noon, not having happen at noon in the school hallway, but so it is. Jennifer Bobe, a question here, and maybe we'll send this your way. What are some of the common denominators of perpetrators of childhood sexual abuse? Are there characteristics that parents should be aware of?
Unfortunately, there's no typical offender. I think what we unfortunately need to start doing as parents is not looking for monsters, but to spend more time trying to eliminate as much opportunity as possible for your children to be alone, one-on-one, unsupervised with adults. And beyond that, the other things as parents, this is not a kid issue. This is a grown person issue. So to protect our kids, we need to use the right terminology for your bodies, allow them to develop their own boundaries and stick with them and stand up with them. Those are consistent with offenders, is they do cross the boundaries. They do allow and let that child get really close to them. 90% are individuals you trust and even sometimes love. And that number should scare us all. Not where you look at everyone as a perpetrator, but just you're aware of who your kid is with.
Very good. Next question coming in from our audience tonight. Liberty changes their phone policy. Why can't the high school do the same? No phones during the day. Jennifer Fremstead, maybe we'll send that your direction. What is the policies and how do they change, and should there be more done there?
I think instead of focusing on not using it, I don't know how many of you can't walk away from your phone. My phone tells me what meetings I'm going to, it tells me where my kids are, it tells me this is an important piece for me, and I would assume it's an important piece for our students as well. I think we do have a responsibility to teach the appropriate use of this, but it's also a learning tool. I can't tell you the number of times I ask Google. I search the internet. I look for answers. It is a learning tool. And at the high school level, we can do assessments, quick little quizzes, right on our phones, and we can see the data up on our boards immediately. This is a really powerful learning device when used appropriately. I think that if we can just be clear that our students are not walking the hallways doing illegal things on their phones all the time. We have great kids who use these appropriately every day. To eliminate those opportunities for really great kids is punitive. We're not there to punish kids. We are there to teach kids. And so we need to be very intentional when we're using our devices in school to make sure that we discuss appropriate use, that we openly and candidly set limits and guidelines in our classroom. We have classrooms where you walk in and it goes in a bucket and you don't touch it until you walk out. But to say that we shouldn't have access from 7:45 to 3:35 really eliminates a very powerful learning tool. And I'm not sure that that's something that we want.
But what is the policy, West Fargo High, Cheyenne, Liberty? Can you speak to that, Jennifer?
I can speak to what we do at West Fargo. Each classroom teacher, just depending on what they use their devices for, some teachers say, not in my classroom. Don't bring it in, I don't want to see it, it won't be used here. But in other classrooms, it becomes a great way to take a quiz. Or when you're working in a group and you're doing research and there's only 5 computers, guess what? This is a computer and you can search the internet for research. So it really is up to the teachers. But the one consistent piece about technology in our buildings is the acceptable use policy. And those procedures are reviewed with our students every year. They're touched on again when they use the technology in the library, and it's reinforced by instructors every time they have computers out. It's just something, make sure you're on the right sites, make sure you're checking your sources. So it's about teaching, and it enhances learning.
So there's no limitation from the school, and the teachers have that say class by
In the
class how they want to
classroom.
do it. Is Cheyenne the same way? Do you happen to know anyone from Cheyenne is it the same way?
As being the SRO there the past 5 years, yes.
Okay, so same thing there. How about the middle schools? Is it different in the middle schools?
This is my second day. It's my understanding is all students are now currently being issued devices. So everything that they would need to Google on their phones, information that they would need to look up, they are able to do that on their device. They are allowed to have their phones at lunch, over the lunch period, and use those, and once that time is over, they're back in the locker till the end of the day.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Good to just have the information, because us as parents, we don't always know. Next question, how do you tell if it's just a calculator or if it's the calculator app to hide pictures? Apparently there's a calculator app now, like we have to follow these things. So how do we tell? How does a mom and dad tell? Rhonda or Jessica?
That goes down to the research you do. I guess on your Apple phone, I have an Apple phone, you have the calculator. Granted, there's so many apps they make that's like, oh, this is identical, and it looks like a calculator. However, your child's hiding stuff within it. And I guess from my knowledge, I just click it. And if you click it and it doesn't open and look like a calculator, it looks like a calculator.
And it works like a calculator.
And it works like a calculator. But then if you do the research like Jorgensen has out there, if you all take one of these, it'll show you the different apps and how they look. And basically, if your child has more than one calculator on your phone, I'd kind of question what they're doing as well.
And with that, you need a code. Like I said, the calculator works. But you get into it, you need a code to unlock that. And that's normally where there is photos or information that that students and kids are hiding from their parents that they don't want them to find.
Nicole, you had something you wanted to say.
I was just going to add, I mean, working in juvenile court all these years, where there's a will, there's a way. And your children are going to be one step ahead of you. But if I can make any kind of statement tonight, it's listen to them. When they're in your car and they're with your friends, listen to what they're talking about. When you're sitting at dinner, listen to what they're saying on the phone to their friends or how much time they're spending. When you talk about students walking down the hallway with their heads in their phones, so are parents. So we need to take time. If you overhear, I'm kind of the crazy carpool mom because awkward conversations with teens is kind of my life. And so we will have awkward conversations in my minivan, going to tournaments, going to potlucks, going to games. Listen to them. They will drop names of apps, and now you have something to follow up with them to discuss. It's about those open conversations. Most of the time, what I find out about what's going on, it's from my kids, and listening to them having secret conversations that they think they're having in the backseat.
I wish I could say it's just the kids, but us adults have that NCAA basketball pool button on our computers too, the boss button. You pop it and it brings up a spreadsheet when you're watching basketball. So it's not just the kids that are culpable here. Next question coming out from, don't laugh, Heath, you've done that too. There have been teachers in the past that have been investigated for the same issue as the one this summer in Fargo and other places in North Dakota, and all have gotten off. Why did it take this one to have these meetings? Because it was in the news? I'm not sure who would like to take that one. Is there something in particular about this case that led us within the district to have this conversation tonight?
I'm going to give this a whirl. First of all, she has not yet been sentenced. Okay, we'll start with that. So we don't know what the sentence is. As far as why others may have gotten off to what we would say easy, I think that is ultimately would be a prosecutor's or a judge's they make those decisions. Us as police officers, detectives, as a police department, we investigate the crimes. We put the case together. It gets forwarded to the state's attorney's office, and decisions are made there. So I guess that is probably the best way that I can answer that. The police, we don't sentence. It's out of our hands. We just investigate and hand over the evidence.
Yeah, the facts of this case, there has been a guilty plea on several of those counts as well, so just for the
Correct.
record, that's another step in this story. Jennifer Fremstead?
I just want to say I'm at the start of my 6th year, and the first time that we were in the news, there was a significant change to policy, and so I do want to say that there was a response from our district, and I think the very best intention was we need to set very specific guidelines for our teachers about what appropriate communication with students is. And so that was reviewed, and as an administrator who walks through that policy every year, every moment that we can, we have conversations about building positive relationships with kids. Because we know that if we can make connections with kids, they want to learn from us. It's a really hard balance. But what we have said to our staff is, we provide you with the tools to communicate with kids appropriately. We use Power School. Our kids have access to their grades and their homework. We use as a learning tool, we use Schoology. If they want to see what homework they have that. Both of those applications have emails where we can email back and forth right with kids through a learning portal. We have our office lines where you can call our school line direct, but at no time should we be giving out personal phone numbers for kids to reach us. So we've really made a concerted, intentional effort to be very explicit about what is appropriate and how we should use that. I think the difference was, and I think Superintendent Sleddy spoke it beautifully in her intro. I think what we didn't know is that it takes more than that. That we're the sadness that we feel is that we're having to respond. Had we had any idea, had we known, think about this, every teacher that comes into the profession, we do extensive background checks and we do all of these wonderful things, right? And every teacher goes into it, and maybe I'm naive, because we love teaching kids. The very idea of it should bring just great joy. And so I think that's what made this so sad. And I think that's why we have to have this conversation. Because a policy isn't going to change the behavior that we witnessed. And I think that was the scary piece. And so when we, as an administrative group, and as you talk with other teachers, that heavy sense of sadness said we have to do more. But we can't do it without all of you. And that's what makes tonight so powerful. Seeing parents here asking really hard questions that we muddle through in the hopes that we get it right, that we're willing to put ourselves out there in search of answers that really protect our kids. The unfortunate incident has brought about this conversation, and I think in an effort to be incredibly transparent and proactive, that's what led to this conversation. It wasn't lack of response. This is a different type of response.
Next question, and just in the interest of time, we're down to our last 10 minutes, how fast the time goes. If we could just maybe, your best 30 seconds on any question that comes up would help us move through it the best we can. Question, I'm going to change a little bit the question that came in here. I want to ask this to Jessica and Jacob, and then I want Officer Jorgensen to comment too. The question that came in, how many students are engaging in the sexting behavior? So Jacob, I'll start with you, then Jessica, what percentage of students do you think are sending or receiving nude photos? What percentage do you think that looks like?
I mean, we were having a discussion with Superintendent Sleddy and Chief Yankee right before this, and we all kind of decided that there's really no way to know exactly. We've talked about different apps on that sheet that Jorgensen has up here and different ways that there are to secure that information, and there's no really true way to know. But meeting with Superintendent Sleddy the other week, Jessica and I, we came up with, we'd say probably around at least 50% of students walking through the high school.
A minimum of 50%.
At least 50, one in two.
At least half of our school as a minimum, just personally from Cheyenne, would have something like that. And I guess it goes down to Snapchat's the biggest app out there that everyone, like Chief Yankee said, is daughter's not allowed to have it because the stuff that goes on is ridiculous. And it was said, like, how many of you love your boyfriend or girlfriend? You're gonna send a picture, and then all of a sudden next week you're not together, but guess what? All of his friends see that picture. And so, or you send a picture, all of your girlfriends at lunch get to see that picture. So it goes down to it goes around a minimum of 50%. The police department said at least 80%, so there's no telling, it's just out there.
Rhonda, what do you, 80%?
I think it's well above 50%. But, the other thing I just want to put out there is, kids, like Nicole said, their brains aren't fully developed, okay, and kids, they don't always make the smartest decisions. And sometimes when it's something embarrassing, and I've seen this personally, where, well, I want a nude or else I'm going to tell everybody about this. So they feel like they're forced into doing this. And that's going on.
Blackmail.
Yep.
Yeah, 80%.
Well, that's me.
Chief?
I could be high.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, like they said, there's really no way to know.
Yeah.
There's really no way.
That's scary, even if it's like half that. It's scary for a parent,
Right.
by the way.
Absolutely.
But that's 4 out of 5 phones with something on it. Yikes. I've been told we have until 8:30, so excuse me on the time check there, but thanks for the note there. Next question to come in. What can you tell us about sexual role-playing via Snapchat or texting? Does it legally differ from sexting if pictures are not being shared? Nicole, maybe a few?
I guess I'd first have to ask whether or not it's adolescent to adolescent or adult to adolescent. I guess that would be a little bit different.
Are the laws different?
I think the laws can be different. I guess it all just depends on what you define as like the role playing. If there is some asks for certain acts to occur, for them to possibly see it, to video it, then obviously then we're dealing into the world of child pornography. If it's just talking and there's no discussions of meeting, I'm not so sure that it falls into the world of criminal activity. However, there's always the catch-all law, we always call it disorderly conduct, engaging in behavior that's harassing, annoying, or alarming. And so if it's alarming to one of the individuals about what's being talked about, it could fall under that. So I guess without knowing specifically what the nature of the conversation would be, but could it fall under a legal problem? Absolutely.
Rhonda, anything you want to add to that about legal ramifications, text versus pictures?
No, I think Nicole, she pretty much, she nailed that.
Okay, good. All right, next question. I know this forum is just a start, but as fast as technology is expanding, how can we as lay people be anything but reactionary on this and many concerns, on the many concerns of the internet? I think the question is, how do we get ahead of this instead of just being a reactionary with the technology as fast as it's growing? Anyone want to take a run at that
one of the things as a parent that I do, and again, where there's a will, there's a way. But and this kind of bothers my own phone a little bit. But as a parent, you have to be willing to suffer a little bit for the benefit of your children. We all share an Apple ID. They download an app, the app comes on my phone. So I also have that app. Most apps, in order to even open up an Apple ID, you have to have an email, you have to have it tied to a credit card, you have to have those types of things. Where there's a will, there's a way, obviously, but it's just being proactive. You know, when you're always talking about like stepping ahead, when we talk about Snapchat, I'll just walk into my kids' rooms and grab their phone and say, let's open them. Let's open them. So they randomly know. And sometimes it's a prevention thing. It's not an I got you thing. If your kids know you're going to check and you're going to snoop through it and you're going to educate yourself, the goal is that they don't do it. I think that is ultimately all of our goals. It's not the can I catch my kid doing something wrong. It's can I prevent them from wanting to do something wrong, and being very proactive in that discussion. So educating yourself, using the terminology, because if they think you know and they think you might find it, they might not do it in the first place.
As a teenager, I'm 17, I'm going to be 18. I am a senior in high school. I go to college next year. Guess what I have on my phone? Life 360. My parents track everywhere I go. If they see me at school, I forget to send a text. They go right on there, I'm at school. I also get to see where they are all the time. They're not at home. Oh, my mom's on an appointment. Oh, my dad's at his office. So as a teenager, it should never leave. When I'm off at college next year, they're still going to have that on me. I'm not going far, I'm going to NDSU, but they still want to know. And I think having that, I honestly love when my parents ask me about my life. As a parent, if I'm hanging out with my friends, my parent walks in, my mom or dad, they start asking my friends about what's going on with their life. Staying connected, like Nicole said, and talking with your kids and finding out what's going on in their lives, I think is the most beneficial thing you can do as a parent.
And in this top 10 apps, there we did put information on there that will alert you different apps that your kids are downloading, or just if you know of inappropriate apps, just to block that so they can't even download it.
We talked about the calculator app. Can you give us just a handful of some of the other ones that as parents should maybe raise some alarm bells or raise a flag?
I'm going to be demoing Snapchat a little bit later for parents to see kind of what that looks like and how you can hide things on Snapchat nowadays. There's Instagram, there's Facebook. I mean, kids are out there. Those wouldn't be the biggest things. A calculator, I would say, any type of vault that they have, a photo vault. There's Finstagrams, which are probably the worst thing out there, I think, for bullying. And kids can make a fake Instagram and, oh, I had a crappy day, or, oh, I'm out drinking with my friends tonight, and put it on their Finstagram thinking no one's ever going to report them. Little do they know there's other people out there that make a fake Instagram just to bust them. So between those, I think that really narrows it down to what's out there.
All right. Are there apps that can be downloaded without a password? We have this feature set on our teen's phone, and my daughter claims she is the only 8th grader without Snapchat, so there's at least 2 in West Fargo there. There you go. So are there apps that can be downloaded without a password?
I think so. I think that if you have your app, based on how you set up your Apple ID, I guess, if it's free, I don't think you really have to do anything about it. You just click download. As far as I've noticed, I haven't downloaded an app in a while, so I guess if you just use free. Now, if you all have the same Apple ID, then mom's going to get a notification that, hey, my child just put Snapchat on her phone maybe at school, or thought they'd get away with it, and then you're going to have an awkward conversation when you come home that night and mom goes, so what's Snapchat on your phone for? So any free app you can download, but it all depends on your Apple ID, and mom and dad check your phone, oh, you're done having this. So
You can set it up so all free apps and paid apps you need a password to get into. But if you have, like on my phone, I have it set up so I just use my fingerprint. I don't have to put in the password, and my fingerprint just downloads the app. But you can shut that off, so you can absolutely have it set up so nothing can be downloaded without your password.
Jennifer Boba, I'll direct this question to you. What are some of the social consequences of sexting and this kind of abuse? We hear that kids are so resilient. Are they really all that resilient after the damage has been done to them?
No, childhood sexual abuse is the most profound trauma a child can go through. So, and that's on all levels, whether it's youth on youth or, I mean, it is a terrible thing to happen to a child. And I think that, you know, when we're looking at kids and what they're doing and where they're at, we just have to be very open with them and, you know, eliminate secrets from your families. They're just small things that you can do, but we can't eliminate relationships. And this is not a school issue. This is a community-wide issue. And if you have an adult that has a relationship with your child, or you see an adult that has a relationship with a child, say something. If you have a relationship with a child, you might be that child's only lifeline. And we don't want to eliminate that, because that one person could save that kid. But if you do have that lifeline, tell someone. Tell your principal and say, this is what's happening, that you're accountable, and you can wipe your hands clean.
Anyone have anything they want to add to that? No, we're good there. Okay. A couple of questions have come in on the school and what role the school can have. I feel like my child's phone is their personal property. Can a student's phone be searched by the school without a warrant? Principal Fremstead, what can the school do?
So the standard for search and seizure is a little bit different in schools. All reasonable suspicion gives us the right to search. And so just to be clear, when you talk about police officers, they will need to have a warrant. If a school administrator believes that there is something that is unsafe or can harm, and we have reasonable suspicion, we can search. Best practice says we're calling parents. Best practice says we're having conversation. But I think it's a really great thing to have the conversation so that together, if there's something dangerous or harmful, that we find it together and that we handle it together. And so practice in our building would be, we have reasonable suspicion, a parent is called, we have a conversation, we invite that parent in, and together we work through the process. Once again, the goal of the school district is to keep kids safe and healthy. And so there is a different guideline that we have to follow, and ours is reasonable suspicion.
Okay.
If I can add to that, when kids are saying it's my personal property, in all actuality, until you're 18, you can't own property. You can't enter into a contract. So if they buy a new pair of jeans that you don't like, you can take them away. You own them. If it's in their room, if it's in their houses, if it's in their car, it's no different than a driver's license. You don't like the way your 17-year-old is driving, go down to the DMV, you can cancel their driver's license. They don't have the right to property and own property. It's yours. So if they say it's my personal property, no, it's actually not.
Well, that would be a bold step, would it not? We'll say a few prayers. But very, very, very good stuff. Just weird question here, but if the child is 18 and is paying something for the phone and using it, does a parent have any right in that case? Officer Jorgensen, sorry, we're not playing the people's court here, but does a parent still have legal grounds to search a phone in that case? The child is 18 and paying for the phone?
Okay, so when they're 18, if you're paying for it, you have the right to stop paying for it. But as far as whether or not you have the right to search it, it's what's your plan for it. But when they're 18, the only thing that I tell kids all the time, and again, I come across a little harsh sometimes, but at 18, if they don't want to follow your rules, get a big box, put the stuff that you want them to have and put it out on the curb and say, when you want to follow my rules, you can come back in. But you can stop paying for it. I think that's the consequence of that. You know, once they're 18, they are adults. And so unfortunately, their frontal lobe is still not fully developed, but by legal terms, they are adults. So I think your only recourse there is if they won't let you look, you don't pay.
Next question, does the school have a 3-party policy now? Example, 2 adults, 1 kid, or 1 adult, 2 kids. I assume this is to get away from the one-on-one conversations. Principal Fremstead?
We have shared that with our staff, that is the preference, that for 2 reasons. One, we want our students to know that we're a team, that it's never, that they don't have just one person that they can go to, but an entire faculty that will work together to be their support. So by allowing 2 people in on that conversation, they now have 2 resources. So we try to build a bigger, broader community for our students and to have access to multiple resources. But we also let staff know it's just best practice. We keep talking about these poor brains that aren't developed. Their perception of that conversation could be very different than the intent of the adult. And so by having 2 people in that conversation, you now have a better idea of what was actually said. So if we say best practice, you shouldn't be meeting with students alone. Our counselors are available, our administrators are available, and it should never be happening outside contract time. We shouldn't be meeting alone with kids when there's no school in session. Like, it's just inappropriate. And so we want to instill in our students that there's a bigger, broader community of resources for them. And so we try to have more than a single teacher, principal in a room. And it's just best practice.
But I hear you saying it's a preference, but it's not a policy.
No, it's not a policy.
Okay. That was what the question was, so I just wanted to make sure.
And I just want to make sure that I clarify. There are moments when students will meet with counselors individually, and those private conversations should be sacred. I think policy limits what we can provide kids. Best practice is what we need to have conversations about. If we start putting restrictions on, we might not be able to give the students what they need. So what we really need to do is have very explicit conversations with teachers about best practice, building the community, getting resources to kids from multiple avenues, where you don't go to the principal if you're in trouble. You can go to the principal to get answers. You don't go to your counselor just to find out what classes you should take. You can go to your counselor to talk about careers or problems, social emotional problems. You can have a conversation with a teacher and they can take you to the social worker who could take you to, it is a community that is there to provide resources for kids. That's what we want our faculty to know.
Okay, thank you. Next question, and by the way, this is the last of the questions that have been submitted, so if you have one, please let us know. If we run out of questions, we're going to all go home, so if you've got anything on your mind, let us know. What information is shared about internet safety at the elementary level versus the junior high? And this question comes from the parent of 4th and 8th grade girls. What information is shared about internet safety in the elementary schools versus the junior high? How does that information change as far as how it's given out to the students? Do we know?
I'm not elementary.
I don't.
Through library media teacher? Okay, in the elementary school? Okay. And school counselors that are in the classrooms every 3 weeks as well in the elementary school level. Okay. All right, very good. Any other comments or additions on that? Okay. General question here, what can a parent do to prevent their child from using and abusing apps on their phones? Just any good overall advice on apps on their phones. How do we teach our kids to use apps responsibly and use them well without being damaging? Jacob or Jessica, any advice you'd have from a student perspective on that?
I think you stay open with your children, and obviously you want your child to grow and learn, and you make mistakes growing up. We've all made mistakes. We wouldn't be the people we are if we don't make mistakes. It's not a perfect world we live in, and we're not perfect people. So I think just having the information like that you provide and that you can pick up, and learn about, I think is where it all starts. And then unless you have issues, I don't think you need to, I guess, be honest with your child about stuff and have honest communication and open communication, because your child will talk to you if you start an open conversation with them and you're honest with them and they can be honest with you then.
I would say just to, we've talked about kind of discussing the apps that are on the list that are out on the table out there. But I'd say also keeping in mind that some of the apps on here, while they can be used in a poor way and they can have uses that aren't intended, they can also be used in a good way. And they're not necessarily there to do bad things, but they can be used to do bad things. So not to, I guess what I would say is not to accuse them of doing something that they're not supposed to just because you see, like for example, Instagram or Snapchat. Like while they can be used in a poor way, a lot of students walking around the halls are also using them in the way that they're intended or in a safe way.
Just because your child has Snapchat doesn't mean they're off sending nude photos right now by any means. I have Snapchat, I'm not off doing that. I can say that there's obviously bullying that goes on, but there's also benefits. There's communication that can be brought. In school, all we're trying to do is go to class and build together, be a school, be a team, get along with our teachers, be with our teachers and work together to make a great school year. As the second day of school, that's all we're trying to do right now, is to build relationships and build our community together.
I guess the one thing I would like to touch on is privacy settings, to make sure that you know what those are. I go into classrooms often, and I tell stories of Facebook. You hit that I agree. Nobody read that 18-page all the rules and regulations. And I explain to kids, they own that. So they can open it at any time. And any picture, any image, any information that you put on these apps, they own. Facebook owns it. Instagram owns it. Snapchat owns it. And if they do something with it, it is very tough to get rid of it. And I also talk to students a lot about physically knowing who your friends are when you're on social media.
Once you hit that send button, you lose control of where that might go and where it may end up. Panel, it's been a very interesting conversation. Thank you for taking the time. Before we finish up, we'll just go down the road, starting Nicole. Just last thoughts, anything that you want to leave our audience listening radio or here in person tonight with?
I just think that everybody should just know that the kids in our community are awesome. I say to people all the time, I don't work with bad kids. I work with kids who maybe made poor choices. But I think most of us adults in the room could probably attest to we might have made some poor choices too when we were a little bit younger. And just understanding that the majority of the decisions that our youth are making are based on emotion. When we talk about the brain develop, their emotions are 3 times greater than ours. We have to be patient. We have to be kind. We have to listen. They're all going to turn out okay. We just need to support them, and we need to not be afraid of them. And we need to realize that they're our future and they're members of our community, whether they're yours, whether they're the neighbors, or whether they're the kid in your back seat you're just giving a ride somewhere. So let's all be kind and compassionate and just love the children that are around us. They're awesome. They're just great human beings. Take the time to get to know your kids and just take the time to just get to know kids in general.
A part of the thing, Jessica was going to demo a Snapchat, kind of how to get into that. I'm assuming parents want to see that. Show of hands, maybe? Yes, okay. If we will make sure that there's time at the end. For me, just getting into classrooms, feeding kids information, and teaching them of the dangers out there. And I also think it's my job as the SRO here is information like this. I need to share this with parents. Any information I have, I need to make that available to you, and you have my word that you will get that from me in the newsletter. But we just really want to have a safe and successful school year.
As a student, I just want to go to school. I'm a senior this year. I just want to get through and graduate and move on. You know, we all do. Not too fast, though. I'm growing. I learn. I'll make mistakes. Having our SRO, our administration, people in the community to help us only makes this place a better place. It only makes our schools greater. It only makes our schools a better place for your kids to want to go. School's a place that kids should feel like they want to go to school. Your child should not feel like they don't want to go to school because someone's bullying them on a social media app or anything like that. Talk to people, they're there for you. Social media can be a bad thing, but it can be a good thing. Always just have open relationships with your children. Just talk to your children and educate yourself.
I would just reiterate things that we've said tonight. Just make sure you have open conversations. Stay in touch with what they're learning in school and what is being talked about in the school about the issues that we've talked about tonight. And just recognizing that, like Dr. Fremstead said, cell phones, they can be used poorly, but if we're all educated on the good uses they have, they can be a powerful tool.
So I was asked here as a principal, and I am certain that when I leave here, the parent hat comes on immediately. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate everything that you all have shared. I do just want to reiterate, I am proud to be part of a district that doesn't want to simply respond when we have to, that we take proactive approaches and address really challenging situations that are uncomfortable to talk about. I'm just really proud to be part of a team that's willing to do that and to recognize how important parents and community members and resources are to all of us. I hope that when you all leave, you understand and will take advantage of all of these resources. And if you have questions, the conversations shouldn't end tonight. They should continue. Because I am certain that in the next few days, I will have more questions and I will reach out to someone to get the answers. And so I encourage you to do the same. We're all available and we all want the same thing for our kids. And so please don't let the conversation end when you walk out the door tonight.
You know, I grew up in a really, really small town where riding bike on gravel roads was really cool and normal, and I didn't come home till it was dark at night, and everything was fine. And then Jacob Wetterling was taken, and the parents around me totally changed their parenting. It shifted, and we all felt it. And stranger danger was introduced. And unfortunately for all of us, child sexual abuse is now, we know way too much to avoid it. And I'm really hopeful with our community because I feel like the prevention piece has just begun. So this is very hopeful for me.
Thank you, panelists. Jessica, you're going to give us a Snapchat for Dummies lesson here.
All right, so obviously I'm not going to show you how to send a snap. We're not going to be snapping my friends tonight, but I will show you the one piece that Officer Jorgensen requested. There is an app, so that's Snapchat. I have 21 notifications. So it shows up, obviously, screen, you show up, you send a snap, you click, you send snaps. Oh, so it'd be a picture of us, see, you take, and it goes anywhere. So then you can slide up, and there will be Snapchat memories saved. Obviously, mine are blacked out. We don't get to look through my memories tonight. You can go over and see stories that your children have had. It goes right to their camera roll, and you can see the screenshots they've taken, videos they've taken. Then you go over to My Eyes Only. Bam, it's locked. Your child has anything they want saved from Snapchat, from their memories, is moved. You type in the passcode, and photos that your child wants saved are on there. And that is for their eyes only, as they would call it. It is My Eyes Only. Now, obviously, there could be good things saved. I obviously want to keep the photos of me and the police officers down on the side. I don't need people knowing I'm tight with the law, you know. And so there's also, that could be where photos are kept that could get your child in trouble. However, don't go accusing them right away. I didn't have it set up until Officer Jorgensen asked me about it a couple weeks ago, so I was not even educated on it. So it is something that's out there. Like I said, they just send a picture, they send it, the person opens it, and it disappears. So they say, obviously, Snapchat owns all photos. They could screenshot pictures, and it is kept on that phone and can be put into a vault or into My Eyes Only.
So you have to screenshot it to save that, or there's a function, My Eyes Only, that stores it?
There's a function. So if I want to go over to my memories and I want to save this, I click on it, and I go to My Eyes Only, and you move the photo.
So not all photos disappear after 10 seconds?
No, not all photos. That's if you save it to your or save it to your memory. So if I want to save this, it's now saved, and it's on my memories. And then you can move and export pictures from there. You can even take pictures off Snapchat and text them nowadays. So it can go from being on Snapchat to being on Twitter, being on Instagram, being in a group chat with a bunch of people you don't even know. So it can go other places. It can also be used to communicate. I have a cousin who lives in California, and we Snapchat to keep up with each other. So there's some good of it. There's also the bad side of it, as social media is nowadays.
All right. Thanks for the tutorial.
Yes.
Jessica and Jacob did say that afterwards, if parents did want to stick around, they just had some questions for them. Because like I said, I am not an expert. I learn from them, and I'm lucky to have that relationship. So they will be available if you would like or have questions.
Thank you for having us as students. Sometimes we don't feel like parents get to hear our side of stuff, so I was very appreciative to be on here and be able to share with parents and educate you guys so we can all learn together.
All right, panelists, thank you for your time. We know that the days and evenings are busy, so thanks for making time for this. And parents who came out tonight, students who came out tonight, I know that Beth and Heath and everyone at West Fargo PD and the school district wants to say thank you for your interest. And there will likely be some additional meetings coming up down the road that you'll be hearing more about, some additional community forums for you to get inside some of these issues that we come up with during the school year. The panelists, I imagine, would stay for a few minutes and visit with anyone who has questions, as well as Beth and Heath. So thanks, everyone, for coming out. Appreciate you making time tonight.